Hello my dear students, welcome to Teacher at Home. Today class we are going to learn the second chapter, Kings and Kingdoms. Many new dynasties emerged after the 7th century. Map 1 shows the major ruling dynasties in different parts of the subcontinent between the 7th and the 12th centuries. The emergence of new dynasties. By the 17th century, there were big landlords or warrior chiefs in different regions of the subcontinent. Existing kings often acknowledged them as their subordinates or samandas. They were expected to bring gifts for their kings or overlords, be present at their courts, and provide them with military support. As samandas gained power and wealth, they declared themselves to be Mahasamanda, Mahamandaleshwara, the great lord of a circle of region, and so on. Sometimes they asserted their independence from their overlords. One such instance was that of Rashtrakutas in the Deccan. Initially, they were subordinate to the Chalukyas of Karnataka. In the mid-8th century, Dandidurga, a Rashtrakuta chief, overthrew his Chalukya overlord and performed a ritual called Hiranyagarbha, literally the golden womb. When this ritual was performed with the help of Brahmanas, it was thought to lead to the rebirth of the sacrifice as a Kshatriya, even if he has not won by birth. In other cases, men from enterprising families use their military skills to carve out kingdoms. For instance, the Kadamba, Mayura Sharman, and the Gurjara, Pradihara, Harichandra were Brahmanas who gave up their traditional professions and took to arms, successfully establishing kingdom in Karnataka and Rajasthan respectively. Administration in the kingdoms. Many of the new kings adopted high sounding titles such as Maharaja, Adiraja, the great king, overlord of kings, Tribhuvanam Chakravartin, a lord of the three worlds, and so on. However, in spite of such claims, they often shared power with their samandas as well as the association of peasants, traders, and brahmanas. In each of the states, resources were obtained from the producers, that is, peasants, cattle keepers, artisans, who were often persuaded or compelled to surrender part of what they produced. Sometimes they were claimed as rent due to lord who asserted that he owned the land. Revenue was also collected from traders. 400 taxes. The inscriptions of the Cholas, who ruled in Tamil Nadu, refer to more than 400 terms for different kinds of taxes. The most frequently mentioned tax is veti, taken not in cash but in the form of forced labor, and kadame or land revenue. There were also taxes on thatching the house, use of ladder to climb palm trees, assess on succession to family property, etc. Are any such taxes collected today? These resources were used to finance the king's establishment as well as for the construction of temples and forts. They were also used to fight wars, which were in turn expected to lead to the accumulation of wealth in the form of plunder and access to land as well as trade routes. The functionaries for collecting revenue were generally recruited from influential families, and positions were often hereditary. This was true about the army as well. In many cases, close relatives of the king held their positions. Preciouses and land grants. Preciouses contains details that may not be literally true, but they tell us how rulers wanted to depict themselves as valiant, victorious warriors. For example, they were composed by learned brahmanas who occasionally helped in administration. The achievement of Nagabada. Many rulers described their achievement in Prashastis. You read about the Prashasti of the Gupta ruler Samudragupta last year. One Prashasti written in Sanskrit and found in Gwalior, Madhya Pradesh, described the exploits of Nagabada, a Pradihara king, as follows. The king of Andhra, Saindava, Sindh, Vidarbha, part of Maharashtra, and Kalinga, part of Orissa, fell before him even as he was a prince. He won a victory over Chakrayuda, ruler of Kannauj. He defeated the king of Vanga, part of Bengal, Anartha, part of Gujarat, Malava, part of Madhya Pradesh, Kirada, forest people, Turushka, Turks, Valsa, Malsya, both kingdoms in North India. Kings often rewarded Brahmanas by grants of land. These were recorded on copper plates which were given to those who received the land. What was given with the land? This is a part of the Tamil section of a land grant given by the Cholas. We have demarcated the boundaries of the land by making earthen embankments as well as by planting thorny bushes. This is what the land contains: fruit-bearing trees, water land, garden and orchards, trees, wells, open spaces, pasture land, a village and hills, platforms, canals, ditches, rivers, slit laden land, tanks, granaries, fish ponds, beehives, and deep lakes. He who receives the land can collect taxes from it. He can collect the tax imposed by judicial officers as fines, the tax on betel leaves, that on woolen cloth as well as on vehicles. He can build large rooms with upper stories made of bakel bricks. He can get large and small wells dug. He can plant trees and thorny bushes. If necessary, he can get canals constructed for irrigation. He should ensure the water is not wasted and that embankments are built. Unusual for the 12th century was a long Sanskrit poem containing the history of kings who ruled over Kashmir. It was composed of an author named Kalhana. He used a variety of sources, including inscription, documents, eyewitness accounts, and earlier histories, to write his account. Unlike the writers of uh, Precious Seas, he was often critical about rulers and their policies. Warfare for wealth. You may have noticed that each of these ruling dynasties was based in a specific region. At the same time, they tried to control other areas. One particular prized area was the city of Kanauj in the Ganga Valley. For centuries, rulers belonging to the Gurjara, Pradihara, Rashtrakuta, and Pala dynasties fought for control over Kanauj. Because there were three parties in this long drawn conflict, historians often describe it as the tripartite struggle. Rulers often also tried to demonstrate their power and resources by building large temples. So, when they attacked one another's kingdom, they often chose to target temples which were sometimes extremely rich. One such ruler is Mahmud of Ghazni, Afghanistan. He raided the subcontinent 17 times with religious motive. His targets were wealthy temples, including that of Somnath, Gujarat. Much of the wealth Mahmud carried away was used to create a splendid capital city as Ghazni. Other kings who engaged in warfare included the Chahmanas, later known as the Chauhans, who ruled over the region around Delhi and Ajmer. They attempted to expand their control to the west and the east. They were opposed by the Chalukyas of Gujarat and the Gahadavalas of western Uttar Pradesh. The Chahmana ruler was Prithviraj III, who defeated an Afghan ruler named Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1191 but lost to him the next year in 1192. A closer look at the Chalos from Urayur to Tanjavur. How did the Cholas rise to power? A minor chiefly family known as the Muttarayar held power in the Kaveri Delta. They were subordinate to the Pallava kings of Kanjipuram. Vijayalaya, who belonged to the ancient chiefly family of the Cholas from Urayur, captured the delta from the Mudurayar in the middle of the 9th century. He built the town of Tanjavur and a temple for goddess Nishumba Sudini there. The successors of Vijayalaya conquered neighboring regions and the kingdom grew in size and power. The Pandyan and the Pallava territories to the south and the north were made part of this kingdom. Rajaraja, first considered the most powerful Chola ruler, became the king in 981 and expanded control over most of these areas. He also reorganized the administration of the empire. Rajaraja's son Rajendra I continued his policies and even invaded the Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka and other countries of Southeast Asia, developing a navy for these expeditions. Splendid temples and bronze sculpture. The big temples of Tanjavur and Gangaikonda Cholapuram, built by Rajaraja and Rajendra, are architectural and sculptural marvels. Chola temples often became the nuclear settlements which grew around them. These were centers for craft production. Temples were also endowed with land by rulers as well as by others. The produce of this land went into maintaining all the specialists who worked at the temple. very often lived near it. Priests, garland makers, cooks, sweepers, musicians, dancers, etc. In other words, temples were also places of worship. They were the centers of economic, social, and cultural life. Among the craft associated with temples, the making of bronze images was the most distinctive. Chola bronze images were considered among the finest in the world. While most images were of deities, sometimes images were made of devotees as well. Agriculture and irrigation. Many of the achievements of the Cholas were made possible through new developments in agriculture. Look at map 2 again. Notice the river Kaveri branches off into several small channels before emptying into Bay of Bengal. These channels overflow frequently, depositing fertile soil on their banks. Water from the channels also provide the necessary moisture for agriculture, particularly the cultivation of rice. Although agriculture had developed earlier in other parts of Tamil Nadu, it was only from the 5th or 6th century that this area was opened up for large-scale cultivation. Forests had to be cleared in some regions. Land had to be leveled in other areas. The delta region embankments had to be built to prevent flooding and canals had to be constructed to carry water to the fields. In many areas, two crops were grown in a year. In many cases, it was necessary to water crops artificially. A variety of methods were used for irrigation. In some areas, wells were dug, other places, huge tanks were constructed to collect rainwater. Remember that irrigation works require planning, organizing labor and resources, maintaining the works, and deciding on how water is to be shared. Most of the new rulers, as well as the people living in villages, took an active interest in these activities. Administration of the empire. How was the administration organized? Settlements of peasants, known as became prosperous with the spread of irrigation, agriculture. Groups of such villages formed larger units called Nadu. The village council and the Nadu performed several administrative functions including dispensing justice and collecting taxes. Rich peasants exercised considerable control over the affairs of the Nadu under the supervision of the central Chola government. The Chola kings gave some rich landowners titles like Muvandavelan, a Velan of peasants serving three kings, Arayar, chief as markers of respect, entrusted them with important officers of the state at the center. Types of land. Chola inscriptions mention several categories of land. Velan Vagai, land of non-Brahmana peasant propagators. Brahmadeya, land gifted to Brahmanas. Shalabhoga, land for the maintenance of a school. Devadana, Kani, land gifted to temples. Palichandam, land donated to Jaina institutions. We have seen that Brahmanas often received land grants or Brahmanadeya. As a result, a large number of Brahmana settlements emerged in the Kaveri Valley as in other parts of South India. Each Brahmanadeya was looked after by an assembly of Sabha, prominent Brahmana landholders. These assemblies worked here efficiently. Their decisions were recorded in detail in inscriptions, often on the stone walls of temples. Association of traders known as Nagarams also occasionally perform administrative functions in towns. Inscriptions from Uttaramerur in Chingalput district, Tamil Nadu provide details of the way in which the Sabha was organized. The Sabha had separate committees to look after irrigation works, garden, temples, etc. Name of those eligible to be members of these committees were written on small tickets of palm leaf. These tickets were put into the earthenware pot from which a young boy was asked to take out the tickets one by one for each committee. Inscription and text. What could be the member of a Sabha? The Uttaramerur inscription lays down. All those who wish to become members of the Sabha should be the owners of the land from which land revenue is collected. They should have their own homes. They should be between 35 and 70 years of age. They should have knowledge of the Vedas. They should be well versed in administrative matters and honest. If anyone has been a member of any committee in the last 3 years, he cannot become a member of another committee. Anyone who has not submitted his account and those of his relatives cannot contest the elections. While inscriptions tell us about the kings and powerful man, here is an excerpt from the Periya Puranam, a 12th century Tamil work which informs us about the lives of ordinary men and women. of the outskirts of Adanur was a small hamlet of Pulayas, a name used for a social group considered outcast by Brahmanas and Velalas, studded with small huts under old thatches and inhabited by agrarian laborers engaged in menial occupations. In the threshold of the huts, covered with strips of leather, little chickens moved about in groups. Dark children who wore bracelets of black iron were prancing about, carrying little puppies in the shade of the mardu trees. A female laborer put her baby to sleep on a sheet of leather. There were mango trees from whose branches drums were hanging under the coconut palms in little hollows of the ground. Tiny headed bitches lay after whelping. The red crested cocks crowed before dawn, calling the brave Pulaya of their day's work. And by day, under the shade of this kanji tree, spread the voice of the wavy haired Pulaya women singing as they were husking paddy. So that's all about this chapter. If you are interested, please do like, share, and subscribe my channel. Okay, thank you.